Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Speaking Legally, where the legal meets the cultural with our legal experts, Royce Russell Esquire, Edward Pichardo Esquire, and myself, Dr. Stacey N.C. Grant. Today is July 6th. What is it, 5 days after someone had a birthday? So happy birthday again
The
to
whole month,
Mr.
the whole
Russell.
month, we rock out the
The whole
whole
month. Okay,
month.
I get it because
You
when
know, that's
October
that's your that's
comes,
your motto. That's your
it
tagline, right?
is, it is, it is.
The
So
whole
you
month.
have it. This is your month. This is your
All
month
right.
to rock out. But there's a lot going on in the world. Before we get started, Mr. Russell, how you feeling? Birthday and Fourth of July holiday for those who celebrate or not celebrate.
Feeling great. No complaints. Trying to prepare for my next life to be my best life. You know, that's how we do. And so you prepare for one decade before that decade comes, right? So I'm not going to announce what decade I'm in, but you prepare for the next decade, right? And so I'm putting in that work now, putting that work in now so I can see the fruits of the labor later on. But I want to welcome everybody to today's show. Thank you for tuning in. It's we're gonna do something unique and something different in this show. So stay tuned while we get finish our salutations.
Absolutely. And Senor Pichado says, Buenas tardes. Unfortunately, he is unable to be live today, but of course, sends his regards to all of you. And as we start this seventh month of the year, it really came kind of fast. I don't know where the first 6 months went. We unfortunately have seen a lot going on in the news. So we're not going to do a full hour show today. We're just going to talk about it, acknowledge that there's a lot of pain, a lot of trauma that is happening in our world. Unfortunately, the headlines continue to be filled with unfortunate incidents of what is happening in the world. Yes, Kevin, there's a lot on the legal scene happening. And unfortunately, hey there, Jason, it's dealing with this rise and uptick once again in gun violence. Just over this holiday weekend, over 220 shot and killed in U.S. gun violence over just the 4th of July holiday. So we're not even talking about all of the headlines that happened prior to the holiday weekend. And my heart always goes out to those families who are thrust in the public eye, grieving the loss of their loved one, where that's not somewhere where they volunteered or rose a hand to say they wanted to be a part of. And we're seeing this trend just continue to wreak havoc across the country. So I want to first say my condolences to all of those who've been affected by the uptick in gun violence. And I'm confused, Mr. Russell, as to
Well,
why
I
as a
mean,
country we
look,
can't get past this with putting in some laws and legal
it's not
boundaries.
important. It is not important to obviously those that are part of our political system. It's just not important. We saw the Supreme Court do away with what many have been known to recognize as a constitutional right, which is Roe v. Wade. We saw the Supreme Court say, no, we're not doing that. That's off the table. Something that some people historically see as ingrained in the Constitution, such as the First Amendment, just ingrained. How can it disappear? But yet we see this struggle, and it's not even really a struggle, it's just defiance to ensure that the Second Amendment, in the capacity that it is in, we all know you have the right to bear arms. That's the theme around the Second Amendment. To let it be implemented and exploited. Actually, I'm going to use the word prostituted in a way that there's no restrictions and everyone can be victimized on any given corner. It's just outrageous, right? It is outrageous. And let's think about the time for when, and this might be a little broad brush, but when the Constitution and that type of amendment was passed, you had properties, you had cows, you had farms. It was protection of property and land. Someone can come on your land and just do whatever they want, break into your home, steal your cow, steal your farm life, your livelihood. I mean, that's part of the basis in the initial construction of such a right, the right to bear arms. Now the world evolved, and it evolves to where we're at now. And we still, those that are proponents of this in the way that it's being used, in the way it's being used now and exploited now without any limitations, and you see the sound bites on the news, are just being, and I'll use the words, ridiculous. And I wonder if those same advocates have been affected by the gun violence. I would be able to say, I would verge to say that they have not. And as long as it's distance and it's far away from them, then everything is okay. We can talk about, making sure that the rights stay alive, and it is no restrictions. We can talk about that until it hits home. And you're right. We're not going to do a full show because I think the news does a good enough job of bringing bad news into every household every single day. And I think those who have used guns in a way that it is unimaginable, whether shooting in a crowd, whether shooting at a gathering, it's just, I don't want them to take the floor. I mean, we're talking about it because it's the elephant in the room. And how can we have a show where the cultural meets illegal and we don't talk about it? And now we've talked about it in a way that was more legal, talking about the Supreme Court, as you put up, talking about the Supreme Court, Supreme Court ruling against New York's statute and law in reference to ensuring that if you're going to have a carry permit, if you're going to carry a gun, you need to have special needs. That means, as we stated in our previous show, you have a business where there's a lot of cash. Your occupation requires it. Striking that down, have the Supreme Court striking that down, and then knowing that has a ripple effect on other states, and watching other states like California, Illinois, New Jersey start to pass laws to kind of tighten up, what the Supreme Court has struck down as a way of ensuring street safety, is unimaginable. And we usually start our show with saying, giving respect to our ancestors, and we say rest in power, and we name names. There's no need to do that on this particular show, because we can look at the mass shootings and we can look at the future and some of the present and past, how it's been taken away from us. Some of the young folks that have died, some of the folks that are living a vibrant life now who had died at the hands of guns, whether it's in an urban environment or whether we're talking about Highland Park in Chicago, or whether we're talking about Texas. We're at a point where schools are spending more money on technology in order to prevent guns from coming into the school and to prepare for mass shootings than they are spending on textbooks. That's unimaginable. And somebody's going to talk about how the Second Amendment should rule over everything.
That's why Kevin called it they're treating it like the Second Commandment. That when, we can chuckle at that, but it's true. I mean, my heart continues to go out. This is real life. This is not Hollywood made for TV. These are people dying in the streets, innocent people. Some who went to a supermarket, some at a game, some at a holiday. When we talk about all of just 2022, we're not even going backwards into 2021, 2020, when we're in the height of seeing what was happening with so many of the social unrest situations. But this is 2022. And how many lives? COVID took enough from the planet. And it's like gun violence is just, I don't know. We were trying to normalize a situation that doesn't have to be normalized, when there are other countries who don't deal with this because they put certain measures in place when it comes to carrying live ammunition.
And let me add something to that. You talked about the numbers of deaths and shootings that took place this past 4th of July. In total, there have been 300 mass shootings in America. 300. That's up until early July. Well, July 1st is the earliest you can get. That's the number. That whether it's school, whether it's a gathering, whether you had a barbecue, you have 300. And that doesn't even include 101 shooting into a crowd, me against you, this whole ghost gun violence that we see here. And so, hey, legal meet the culture. What is a ghost gun? Ghost gun is a gun that is created by various parts of guns, various parts of it. So this way it's untraceable. And so people put together what they call a ghost gun. It's not bought, it's not registered anywhere. It is using the internet. It's like creating a bomb. You know, you use the internet, you get the pieces, you create a recipe, and then you have a ghost gun. And so the shootings in Massachusetts, the shootings in Illinois, the shootings in New York, shootings in New Jersey, we haven't even talked about that in relationship to ghost guns. And the way the way I see it, and one of the attacks that are attacks to the fact that the Supreme Court has struck down New York's law, one of the things that states are doing is that they are heightening the restrictions. So you saw in New York, they raised the age to 21. In New Jersey, most recently, they now require, in order to obtain a gun permit, you have to have training in order to get your gun license. They outlaw 50 caliber weapons, and now all handguns have to be registered. And the last one was kind of amazing because I thought all handguns had to be registered. How can you have a gun and it's not registered? You know, a matter of fact, you know, in New York and in many states, your dog has to be registered. Picture that. Your dog has to be registered because if you get bit, you know, if the dog attacks someone, if the dog is loose, you know, that's one of the things that were implemented. You even have chips around the collar. And now we're just getting to a space and time where you have to register a gun. Let's use technology. Let's put chips in the gun so we know where that gun is. I mean, you know, I don't know if that can happen. I'm just, you know, what they call talking off the top of the head, but it sure sounds good to me, because one of the attacks and one of the ways to attack the gun violence is to really deal with the restrictions on purchasing, tightening the rules of purchasing. That could be economic, make it so expensive that people can't purchase it. That could be raising requirements and restrictions that folks have to abide by. But we are seeing this happen in Maryland and New Jersey and New York, you know, even in Hawaii, how we're just drilling down on trying to make the laws even tighter.
And thank you for educating the audience about the ghost guns. You know, this is where the legal meets the cultural. We need to understand what's happening, what's being created, the different layers and levels of what we see impacting our communities in high numbers. So, like you said, the news does a great job of sharing all of this content over and over again. Like I can't watch, but so much, it's just too much. I say a prayer when I hear about it. I'm not a person that likes to consume too much negativity. And unfortunately, our news is full of all of the bad things. You might get a sprinkle or two of some of the good news that's happening across the globe, but the focus on it can wear on you. And I want us to just have you share from the heart some thoughts on this whole era that we're in and what we can do.
Well, one of the things is that if you go back to one of the slides that you showed, I think it was the police officer at the Highland Park. I think you can, if you can bring that back up. I think it was one shot that you showed, he's covering his face. It's almost like a video. The one that you showed earlier was like a video. Yeah, go back to the one more slide and you'll see right there. Stop right there. Now
it's going to keep scrolling.
Oh, all right, but it goes, if you let it go back and forth, that's great. That's an important site right there. That speaks volumes, because I'll make the analogy to cardiac arrest, a tactical guide on how to handle unlawful police stops. One of the things that we talked about and we talk about in the book is psychological evaluations to make sure that abuse doesn't happen on the street, to make sure that someone is fit and proper to do the job. When you look at that picture there, can you tell me honestly that you think that that person might be psychologically balanced to do their job the day after, 2 days after? 3 days after they're seeing multiple bodies, that's war, right? This is not, I went to a house and someone was deceased there, and we covered up the body really quick, and that was a one-off. And 8 weeks later, maybe that happens, again, or maybe never happens again. They're going to an outing and they're seeing bodies. They're seeing carriages. They're seeing bicycles. They're seeing people screaming. How can you not have some measure of psychological evaluation? And they'll tell you, yeah, we offer it. It's offered. No, it has to be mandatory. Just like going to the range has to be mandatory, because that will affect how you do your job. That will heighten your awareness, your anxiety, your implicit biases, your fear when you conduct a police stop, or what you might do to try to protect yourself during a police stop. So everything is tied together. It's not, well, a vision over here and then a vision over there. It is what this gentleman has saw and his hands over his face that will lead the charge the next day, and how he reacts either to something or how he acts in regards to something. And that's very important. That's very important. We have our kids out there. We're out there.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So I look at that, and as Jason said, hypervigilance is happening on both ends. It's happening on both ends. Now, when it relates to police stops, maybe police don't recognize that the person that's being stopped, they're hypervigilant too. So if you come in plain clothes and you stop me, I don't know who you are. I need to see shield and badge. You at my door. So that's that hypervigilance. It's hypervigilance in performing their job and how they go about it. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is what is really going to be the solution here, and how are we going to attack this? And if you show the other slide with Eric Adams and I believe the Attorney General, Letitia James. All right, that's the slide. That's great. Because that's one of the solutions. New York City, state of New York announced lawsuits against ghost gun retailers. Now, what is being done here, and now this happened around about 3 or 6 days after the Supreme Court shot down New York State's requirements. What I'm gonna call a special needs to carry law. They shot that down. You don't need a special need, you can carry. Right now, New York has reframed this as special places. Always implemented that, but you can't go in churches, gatherings, trains, schools if you have a gun, right? But that should have always been the case, and I think that was always the case. But the way New York is attacking this, which you see other states, if they want to be progressive, is they need to attack this the way the pharmaceutical industry was attacked when it came down to the opioid pandemic, right? What happened is that there were civil lawsuits against pharmaceutical companies that went straight to, the oxycodone, went straight to the selling of those drugs, prescribed drugs, overprescribed drugs, overused drugs, invading our society in every which way, being abused. So what New York has done under the public nuisance law is that we're going to use that same tactic. We know you're selling the parts. People are just not getting the parts. It's not like you go into a chop shop, for those who live in the Bronx, at Hunts Point in New York City, where there's wheels and tires and things, you buying parts. You go into the manufacturer and you're getting these parts, and then these ghost guns are created. So I applaud Letitia James for taking that attack. She's a person of color. I know she knows that it's hit the industry. Hit our particular culture, our people in a way that is unimaginable, not in reference to massive shootings, but on day-to-day violence, or day after day, or every other day violence. And these ghost guns exist. And so what a way to attack the industry. You're making a profit from this. You're selling these parts. All right, we want to look at your books. And if we find you liable, the money and the profits that you made from that is going to stopping gun violence, because we know you're selling the parts.
Right. And that's a key example of also why it's important for us to put the right people in office, once again, so that they can make decisions that help to protect the community. And kudos to all of the states who are taking matters into their own hands with cracking down on what the Supreme Court opened up.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
that's where we are.
Look, we said we wouldn't be on here long. I think it's one of the this is one of the shows that we could play over and over. Hopefully, we will not have to play it over and over. Hopefully, there are folks out there um, that see the show, spread the word. Hopefully, there's an ear, somebody who thought it was cool to carry, may have heard their parents listening to the show or a loved one. Don't do it. We have talked before about the penalties. The penalties are vast and heavy. You can see the federal government starting to get involved in the criminality of possessing guns. They're not up the state. And at the bare minimum, if you have a gun and you're caught on a federal level and you have no priors whatsoever, no criminal history whatsoever, you're looking at a mandatory 5 years, 60 months in jail, no ifs, ands, and buts about it.
And that's just for carrying a gun.
And if you brandish a gun during any type of criminal act, you're looking from 7 to 10 years. No judge can go below it. Nothing can happen. That's it. And so we could speak to the criminal side and we could speak to the legal side and the punitive side up to that. We can do that all day. We have done it. We could do it all night. And if you have a prior and you're found with a gun, you're looking at 922G, which is a federal offense. And then you're looking at even more time because as a felon, you're not supposed to have a gun. And now you have a gun. And there's really no argument that can be made as to why you had that gun. But we can go on and on. One of the things I will say, I think is a solution as we round the hour, is really uniformity. There has to be uniformity. There has to be states that are in line with each other. It can't just be New York looking at what New Jersey does, and then we're going to make sure that our laws are comparable. It has to be New York looking at New Jersey looking at Connecticut looking at Pennsylvania looking at Ohio, and collectively having uniformity. That's the key. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about holding hands, we are one, singing the song and standing and holding your heart during the national anthem, right? If you want to talk about unity, that's unity. Let's start to make the laws in uniform with other states and other actions of other states.
And actions that are positive actions and actions that benefit our communities and our families. So good point. Unfortunately, we couldn't share on something with a higher note. This is the real serious situation that we're in. So please, the summer is just beginning. 4th of July is where we really see people traveling and moving about. Memorial Day is the unofficial kickoff of summer. And I'm concerned about what the rest of the summer will look like. So just be careful, use wisdom. Please get the message out. Do not carry. It's just so many layers to what we see happening in our communities. And when we start to feel overwhelmed or what can we do, it starts with just educating the next person, starting with sharing it with your own family members, starting with these conversations in the community, and then having legal experts like Mr. Russell and Mr. Pichardo to guide you when you're clear or when something does happen and you need someone to advocate for your justice. So
one of the things, Dr. Grant, one of the things that we've seen is that it's just so random, right? There was a time and place where if someone got shot, you knew there was a problem between the two. And rarely was there any innocent bystanders. I'm not proud of it, but that you knew who was hot on the block and who wasn't. And it wasn't over petty stuff. It was over things that I guess you could say really mattered. You owe me money. Unfortunately, if you're in the drug game, you took some drugs you wasn't supposed to. We have violence over the smallest of things. I'm just indiscriminately shooting in the crowd. And this is just on a day-to-day urban side of it, to the point, and on a massive shooting side, to the point where my daughter wanted to go watch the fireworks the other day. I was like, you know what? You got to have your head on a swivel. I was real anxious about it. She made it home safe, but it was one of those things that you never know when and where. This is not a cultural issue. This is an American issue, as you can see. And we can't all lump it on to mental defects or mental instability. That's the cowardly way to go. And that's the scapegoat to keep the status quo. And we know it's not that. And you can't restrict everything to the tilt, because there's still a way and there's still a how and there's still a who. And we just have to decide that we want to stop.
We do. And we have to decide that with the people we put in office to vote on the right protections. So, conversation clearly to be continued. Our prayers once again go out to all of the victims and the families left to mourn their loved ones who were just going about normal activity or enjoying a moment in the holiday and are no longer here. So, we pray for them, and we pray for our country and the leadership across the nation that we really start doing better with being good stewards of these rights that we are bold to claim here in this country, that it really helps all. Thank you, Jason, for that. And of course, we are happy to see that our Chief Justice, Ketanji Brown Jackson, is officially installed. I'm just so thrilled to be able to celebrate that truth and hope that she will bring the kind of balance that we need to the Supreme Court, because we could see what happened with these last decisions. So, any final thoughts, Mr. Russell, before we wrap
Yes,
up for
I
today?
really want to tell our audience and those who are within earshot today and the replay, I want you to stay safe. And I know that it's hard to do. And the reason why I say it's hard to do is because just because an incident hasn't happened in reference to being unlawfully detained or stopped, we know it's happening. So there's fear of that. We know what is happening in the streets and in our communities in reference to random gun violence. So there's fear of that. So it's not an easy task. And it is happening at places that you would never believe, at a basketball tournament where people are playing basketball and all eyes are focused on that. And then something is happening to the left or to the right. Save that. Go use your hands. What happened to knuckle up? What happened to using your words? Use anything but a weapon. And so with that, I say, look, go in Godspeed. We'll see you next week. As I normally say, take care and be well.
Absolutely. And I just want to close with something on a happy note. Just seeing a Chief Justice that looks like me sitting on the bench, and all of us of color, especially women, this is a proud moment. So stay safe, be well, and we'll be back again soon. We might take a little vacation time over the summer, but stay tuned, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard here on Speaking Legally. Thank you, Kevin. And yes, Mr. Russell will continue celebrating for the rest of the month. Bye-bye, everyone.